my journey. I'll be there next week. I will be there next week. Okay, I think we're live, everybody. Welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you wherever you are. I hope to have a great conversation here today, not only with Rena, but also with everyone in the crowd. So just wanted to give everyone a moment to sign in. I think, what is it? We scheduled this for was it 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock in Europe right now? What's the time, Rena?
10.
It's 10. It's super early. Everyone's still in the work from home mode, right? That's only just starting the coffees at this point. Anyway, let's have a chat with the people who've arrived. We've already got 12 people watching, which is fantastic. Now, folks, you might not know, sort of used Livestorm before. If you haven't, then this is actually a really cool platform, very intuitive, very easy to use, almost never breaks down. So it's really good. Why don't you let us know on the bottom of the sort of the window here, you should see a standard chat bar. The chat is on the right-hand side. That's enabled for everybody. So we're a very democratic, open-speaking culture here. So feel free to say hi to everyone. Well done, Alan. This is the behavior we endorse. Hello, Alan. Folks, let us know whether you can hear and see us okay and where, in fact, you're dialing in from today. Rena, I believe you're in Amsterdam. I am in Ho Chi Minh City. And look how global everyone else is. We have the ability to have this conversation no matter where we are in the world. Yeah, fantastic stuff. Good morning, 10 a.m. in the Netherlands. Great to see you, Jürgen. 18 people now joining. Shall we start when it hits 20? I think that's like good number. 19. Who's the lucky 20th? Do they get a prize? I don't know if they do. Oscar's here as well. Great to see you, Oscar. Cool. Okay, we hit the big 20. We're going to kick off. Someone from Cyprus is here. Fantastic. AZ Alkmaar, maybe. The entire team is relocated. I was in Bratislava not so long ago. Fantastic stuff. Okay, we've got loads of people here. Welcome. You should also be aware there's a polling system down on the bottom. So we're going to set a few polls for you to get involved with as well. Also questions. So Q&A. If there's any specific questions you want to make sure we hit, ask them in the question section. We're going to get to them at the end of the show. Otherwise, keep chatting with us on chat. And we're able to keep through it. Ex-Serbian expat, I'd love to visit Belgrade. I had an invitation to go and I didn't. I regret it. So I'll do that one of these days. All right, let's get on with the show, everyone. Today, we're going to be talking about how to master high-volume hiring with AI. And all of this started as a conversation. I think Rena and I have been having ongoing conversations for a couple of months now about, hey, we should do a webinar. And culminated, I think, in a post I did to talk about, hey, actually high-volume hiring is... AI is most suited to high volume hiring. Like, it's most obviously we need it because you cannot actually absorb the hundreds and now thousands of applicants flowing directly into your inbox and expecting that you're going to do any recruiting. That's not happening. So you have to solve that with some sort of technology. And in 2025, that technology is inevitably going to be AI powered, AI imbued in some way. So we thought, okay, certainly this is where AI needs to play. Maybe the first place we're going to see wide adoption in AI is high volume. But how do we kind of get good at it? How do we make sure we're using the right tools? And also, how do we make sure that we don't kind of lose the human in the loop through all of this? Because there is a temptation to say, let's just set up a system and just leave it, and it'll all take care of it. But is that actually the future we want? And do we actually get the best outcomes from that? And so that's the nature of today's talk. I hope that makes sense for everyone who signed up. We want to make this as interactive as possible, of course. So keep talking to us in the chat, and we'll take it from there. Quick question for you in the audience, though. Quick one. Have you used any AI-enabled techniques or software in handling applicant flows? Applications coming in, have you thought, oh, okay, I got to do some AI screening or AI filtering or something like that? Has that worked for you? Are you trying it? Are you thinking about it? Let us know in the comments. Okay, actually, we should introduce ourselves. My name is Hung Lee. I write a newsletter called Recruiting Brain Food. My partner in crime here on screen is, of course,
Rena.
Just on time. So you can see this is not AI. This is just humans like sort of being slightly off time.
I was yesterday at the presentation of the state of Dutch tech here in the Netherlands, and there was actually this hologram. So there was a lady from France actually in a hologram participating in a panel discussion. So I do think that next time we're going to do hologram to hologram.
Was that using like a telepresence, like a projector or something?
Yeah, I was really in a I wanted to say in a green box, but you really saw her sitting. She was really there. It was quite
crazy. I would have loved to have seen a video of that. Because that's another way.
I'm human.
Well, what's interesting there is that physical presence, or that digital physical presence, it almost like it's blurring between the two. And it's already better than Star Wars. You remember the Star Wars scene when Princess Leia comes out of the projector from R2-D2? She was only like 6 inches tall or something. Nowadays you can get full size. So, anyway, Rena Houston, of course, CEO of Pera. Why don't you say a bit about Pera, actually, because it's related to all of this. Like, what does Pera do? Like, what's the concept, and how? What do you do to help recruiters, basically?
Yeah, we help recruiters to make better decisions. And I've been working in the AI space since the past 12 years, basically building predictive models to understand and to identify who's likely to succeed after they're being hired in a job, but know that already very early on in the recruitment process. And we use AI to actually see those patterns because we can't see them by the human eye.
Yeah, so basically, basically predicting future job performance.
Correct.
Prior to making the decision. That's actually really, really interesting. We should dive into that at some point. But yeah, folks, check out Pera. I think it's getpera.com if you are interested in quality of hire and also volume of hire also. Okay, let's get on with this. Let's roll through. I think there's a bunch of questions that we wanted to talk about. Oh, here are the 5 key themes. So let's read them real quick, folks. Can you all see the slides, by the way? It should be on sort of part of the screen that you can see. I see it in my top left. So if you can see that, do let me know. Yes, you can. Thank you, Marta. So let's just read them real quick. Number 1, the balance between efficiency and the human touch. Something that's super, super efficient generally has low human interaction and human experience. So we know that like total human is the solution, but is total AI the solution either? Maybe we need a mix of both. How do we get that balance right? 2, hiring quality. That's actually related to what you were talking about just now, Rena. Like, how do we make sure we're making the right decisions for the candidates that we want to bring on? Point number 3, candidate experience. How do we ensure candidate experience is elevated and not decreased from its already all-time low? Candidate experience is all-time low. Candidate resentment rate all-time high. So how do we actually use AI to improve this situation, which is getting worse? Point number 4, diversity in volume hiring. Does AI help or hinder diversity in this way? It probably can do both. Immediately I'm thinking about it, but let's make sure we're doing the right thing with artificial intelligence there. And final point number 5, data-driven decision making. Do you remember that? That was pre-AI type of data-related stuff. Everyone's into it. Well, what does it mean today when we're using artificial intelligence? Are we still using data-driven decision making by delegating decision making to artificial intelligence? I don't know. Let's talk about it. Okay, let's roll on. Okay, the first question. This is from one of the crowd, by the way. So this is all driven by that conversation we had online. How do we maintain a personal touch while scaling? So this is the key thing. So Rena, let's put it to you. We're recruiting. We've got like 10,000 applicants coming into inbox. Of course, we need technology to kind of deal with it, quote unquote. But then suddenly I'm talking about dealing with things, and then there are possibly human beings there. Like, am I thing into non-human here? How do we do the personal touch? Can we do it? What's your immediate thoughts here?
Well, I think the thought that I have is if I'm a candidate, I want to be able to show myself to you. I mean, that's a key thing. So, and I think what we do know is that standardized tasks are extremely unpersonal, a very unpersonal way to do it, right? So asking personal questions seems much more capable of making this happen, in my opinion. So if you give personalized responses to people, it will also tell them why they are the right fit. And I think what we do with the way our models work is actually that we ask them 3 open-ended questions, and the way you answer them, right? If I ask you a similar question like, Hung, what is great leadership to you and why, you will be able to express your ideas, your thoughts, your experiences in your own way. So I think what we need to do is to give candidates the opportunity to express themselves, and at the same time also provide them with personalized feedback to them, because that's their biggest frustration.
That's really interesting. So what you're saying is the way you can deal with the personal touch while scaling is just be personal. So there's a way in which we could customize the question based on what exactly? Are you talking about sort of reading the CV or something and then
get rid of CVs? I mean,
okay.
CVs, if you're still using CVs, then I think what we do know scientifically is that CVs have a very low prediction on job success. And that doesn't feel personalized. So I think the key point you're making, Hung, is to say, ask a personalized question. In our case, we ask 3. And the way we run those.
Oh, hang on.
Yeah.
No, hang on. Just to
Okay.
stop check there. I wouldn't say it's quite personal though, because you're not so the questions are generated. What they are, they're open-ended. So they're open questions so that anybody can answer them. And I do understand why that is helpful, because suddenly you're not like, it doesn't feel like you're being interrogated. So the difference between open and closed questions is the feeling is you get interrogated. And if you want to practice this with your children, you can try this. Just ask them 3 closed questions in a row, and straight away, the kid's going to know they're in trouble, right? Because they're getting interrogated. It's an intimidation factor. So if you want to intimidate someone, ask 3 closed questions in a row that demand yes, no answers. Guess what? It's actually quite an aggressive thing to do. So asking an open question, you're soliciting their response. So it could be I don't think it's quite, I wouldn't call it personal. What I would call is to say, it encourages them to be to give their personal view of it. Whatever they say is the case. Then what you're saying is the tech that we're talking specifically about Perry here, you can pull what they say in terms of their answer, and then from there figure out whether they've got sort of the right potential for suitability
for a
for this
certain job. Yeah, I will explain. I mean, that sounds almost like magic, but I think we touch upon that later, how that actually works. But if we're talking about candidates and a personal approach, I think the key message is make it personal. Ask an open-ended question that people can actually think about, express themselves in their own words, express their own experiences, and go with that. And we've seen it in the data that people actually prefer that. Even compared to, I mean, I would get rid of CVs, but the other alternative is to run standardized assessments where everyone actually does the same test. Right, that doesn't feel personalized. You're doing a similar IQ test as me, or a similar game as me, right? If I ask you an open-ended question, if I ask you what is the greatest thing about you that's not on your resume, tell me about it, then it's something different, right?
Does everyone get what Rena's talking about here? I think I've suddenly got it. It took me a while, but I'm slow. So if you're also slow like me, then maybe it'll take you a while as well. However, it basically saying there's a very simple way to solve this question. It's not like you got to customize per person. You simply ask them open-ended, and their response will be personalized. So in that way, they inevitably have a different experience for everyone else. Does everyone understand that? I think this is a really important lesson to learn, because you don't necessarily need to use technology for this. You should simply be one of the practices you develop early on in the recruitment stage is to ask those open-enders, so that people can feel as if they're contributing to the conversation rather than just having to respond back with what could be the right or wrong answer. So yeah, we'll talk a little bit about why you're confident on the technology, but I think that itself is the main lesson on that first point is you get the personalized experience by asking the open-ended question. Yes, AZ, we're going to go back to in a second. That's a question you should stick into just copy and paste that into the question section. We'll get back to it. Okay, let's go to the next one. Automated screening saves time but risks losing the human connection. I think that's true, I do think it's true, but I don't think that's necessarily a problem, because the human connection can come in later, I guess is what I'm saying. It's like we don't need just the complete human every single step of the process. It's actually quite annoying. If you're applying for a job as a candidate, you want like speed early on. You need transparency. You need, low latency. And putting a human there can actually increase the risk that latency goes up. So the human comes in at a certain point, but not all the way through. Give me your thoughts on this, Rena. When should a human be part of the process? Like, when are the moments within recruitment you think actually, yes, a human is needed here?
Well, at multiple points in time. I think the great thing I always remember is from L'Oreal telling me that they receive tens of thousands of resumes in the UK with a small team, right? So you want to make sure that the time that you can actually spend, you do it at the right moment in time where it really makes an impact. So what they've seen working with us is that they shifted their personal attention to later on in the process, and very early on in the process, to actually be on universities and talk about the great opportunities they had, but also at the end, making sure that the onboarding process was where time was spent by their teams. And so there is a way to say at some point in time it does make sense to have a human in the process. And I think, coming back to this particular question, because these were all questions that came up right in the chat when you posted on LinkedIn, I think real connection takes a bit of time, right? Which isn't simply available if you do high volume applications. So if you know that a recruiter costs between, I don't know, 60 and 100 euro per hour, that means it's 15 euro per 15-minute call. So screening cost would be even over 15,000 euro per hire for some of our clients. So automation is to some extent a must. But then bringing back to personalization is more than that, is more important than human connection. It's about this feeling of being heard and seen. So in my view, automated screening reduces time spent on reviewing a CV or motivation letters, enabling recruiters to focus on meaningful interactions with the best candidates. I think that's the point.
No. I think you did drop a few cliches in there unnecessarily, Rena, but you were making a good point.
Sometimes you have to use the cliches, Hung, to make your point.
Yeah, you're making the good point, like, the meaningful interaction, right? So how many times is a human interaction unmeaningful? I'll give you an example. Like, when you're doing a screening call with a candidate, you're just asking, are you available questions? Or can you drive a car? Do you have a license? Do you have a work visa? All this type of stuff. Bro, there's no need for a human being to be asking that question. And in fact, it's really quite annoying on both sides that two human beings have to exchange this information. That is a chatbot. That is a form. It doesn't, it doesn't need to be two human beings wasting time with this. And Oscar, I think you're absolutely right. Some candidates find it easier to disclose personal information to AI rather than human. I don't know whether anybody here remembers the Swedish interview robot service called Tengai. Anyone remember Tengai? Well, I was a big fan of Tengai. It was crazy. They actually had an animatronic head that was literally, you had to speak to the head. And others thought, yeah, this is great. There's no pretense as a human being. You literally speak to animatronic head. They had a very interesting finding. They found that there was certain populations that preferred being interviewed by a rubber-headed robot compared to a human being.
Do you know why?
Yes, because those people were from underrepresented communities or marginalized communities. So people, refugees, long-term unemployed, people who just basically would feel that they would be prejudicially assessed by another human recruiter, much preferred speaking to a robot like a rubber head. Now, that tells us a lot about recruitment, right? And I think it tells us that, we can't be overly focused on, more human is better. We need to think about where human needs to be, because humans are actually sometimes worse in certain circumstances, particularly where we haven't successfully created an inclusive environment. It's crazy. When I first found that revelation, I thought, wow, how bad is that you have people that really have would prefer to speak to but at that point a non-AI robot. It was literally a simple yes and no type of thing rather than a human being. So anyway,
it's also because often we feel under pressure, right? If we run an
Mm.
assessment, for example, it feels like an assessment.
Yeah.
And so you have to perform within a certain time frame, or you're being observed or watched, or you have the feeling that you have to comply with somebody else has in his mind or her mind. And
Totally.
so I think this again, coming back to this personalization, the fact that there is no time pressure, that it doesn't matter whether you had a good morning hung, whether you're interviewing me, or whether you had your sugar drink so that your sugar is high and you're pumped up, so you will assess me better than without. That is actually something you want to take out of the loop. That is actually unfair.
Yeah. The hungry judge.
On you and how you feel.
Yeah, this is the hungry judge sort of a case study. But you can talk about whether the case is proven or not. But the reality is, we are variable in our moods throughout the day. That's a normal human activity, and probably we are through the week, through the month, and through the years. Like, our mood changes, and we cannot be consistent with all of this. Therefore, it's a bit of a misnomer to think that putting a human being in there is going to necessarily make it a fairer or better experience. I think humans do need to come in. We'll talk about that in a bit, but I think automated screening saves time, risks losing the human connection. Yes, that is the case, but not always the case. We just got to figure out where the human being needs to sit in. Excellent. AZ, by the way, just as a quick sidebar here, he's mentioned he or she, I forget the name, fairly androgynous AZ. It's not helpful. But self-checkout at supermarket, like, do you like it or not? Yes, no. Let me know in the comments. I want to answer that question. Are you people, would you prefer to do a self-checkout, or do you want to deal with the cashier? What are your thoughts here? Let's have a look quickly. Yes, 100%, but AZ. Yes, Rachel Biancotti loves it. Alan, I'm tipping Alan to say he wants a person to bag his shopping. No, sorry, Alan, I misjudged you. I don't know, prejudice against Alan's right there. Okay, so I know already that we basically have a very European audience here, which makes sense given the time zone, right? Everyone loves self-checkout. I think it's a closed story here in Europe. Of course, we love self-checkout much faster. In the US, they hate it. They want someone to bag their groceries for them. I think it's got to do maybe with the credit card experience. Like, maybe it's a little bit slow with the credit card. I don't know whether it's something to do with tipping culture. Like, what is the deal? I have no clue. But I'm astonished that US supermarkets are pulling self-checkouts out because it's no longer effective. And I was thinking, you know what? Definitely self-checkout. And by the way, Pierre Arnaud, I would say this. I prefer self-checkout when it's a supermarket, but if it's like a grocer on the wet market or something like that, or there's some, of course I want to speak to a human being and do some haggling and all that type of stuff. That's totally the experience there. But when it's you're buying from a big shop that you don't really care about the item, or there's no history behind or no romance behind it, in and out efficiency. So yeah, we've learned about this. Okay, good. I think that's useful for recruiting. I don't know. I don't know what.
We'll do self-interviews, self-structured interviews digitally.
That's the next step. That is the next step. Like, there's nobody on staff at all. Just walk in, QR code, you exit, do it that way. Okay, let's do the second question. How do we avoid prioritizing efficiency over quality of hires? Okay, so I guess this question here is all about, the numbers. We just got to crank through, like, the cost per hire, time per hire. They're the metrics driving us. How do we make sure the quality of hire is in there? Like, is there a technique as a hiring manager yourself? Maybe this is a good answer. Like, how do you make sure that we don't have overriding KPIs that actually damage quality of hire? If you don't know, Rena, it's okay.
You asked it to the audience, but I know. Yeah, no, I think so. I think by making sure that efficiency is also about efficacy. So I can be extremely efficient if I randomly select 10 out of 1,000 people, right? Which is basically what CV selection does, by the way. But it's not effective. So you need to use data, and if you do so. If you use data, use the best data. So we know that traditional assessments are worse than our AI models. That means that, that means that your final selection is also worse. So if you want to make sure that you talk to the right 10 people, you have to use Para. I'm joking.
How do we avoid using? Yeah, use Para. Solved. Yeah. All problems solved.
No, but I mean, the point is, we have to, and this means a shift in thinking also in recruitment. The problem I found over the past 10 years is that recruitment and the KPIs of recruitment are usually about efficiency, time to hire, do it quickly. But the data around, have we actually hired the best people? How are they performing? Are they actually staying? The data, by the way, sits in silos. It's actually even a different system than the recruitment system. So do we ever see back as recruiters the data around, did we hire the best people? And my point about, my joke about AI and Para is that if you have that data, if you know who were the best people, you can actually use them to model and use that for your recruitment processes. And so it is actually.
Okay. So what you're saying is basically Para's got aggregated data that can be brought to bear outside of these sort of HR silos. So I think a big part of the problem with us doing quality of hire is because I think you're right. We do need employee performance data. Typically sits in a different system, sits in a different department, and to be honest with you, recruiters are often not around long enough in the business to even care about this. Because what is the amount of tenure that TA actually has within a business right now? I think that tenure is getting lower and lower. I'm seeing a lot more sort of talent acquisition roles going to full fixed term contracts, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, etc. And I'm thinking, okay, if people are coming in at that type of time frame, you don't have the time really to think about, okay, let's dive into the employee data. You're not going to be around long enough. So a great deal of this is a little, I won't say out of our control, but it's kind of like it's an external pressure that's causing us an issue. So what you're saying though is basically Para has a body of interview information that's able to tell people generally where the quality of hire is going to be based on their responses, essentially.
Yeah, correct. So I think for me, it is about quality of hire. So we should make it about quality of hire. And what we've seen in the work we've done over the past 10 years is that efficiency is usually a byproduct of that. So it is actually about quality of hire. And the way to do it, and the way we did it, was in that journey to look at all types of data in the process. So we analyzed IQ, personality data, IQ data, recruitment decisions, manager performance ratings, actual KPI data, and observations of behaviors of people that work together in a peer network in a company. And particularly the last bit, so how people are being seen by others and multiple others in a team on competencies correlate very highly with an actual outcome in the job. An actual outcome means more revenue, more innovation.
Yeah, hang on. I like this sort of kind of 360 assessment of capability from people who've worked with you. So as I understand this, what this means is you speak to your colleagues and you say, okay, Hung reckons he's got great customer service skills. Great. How would you rate his customer service skills? Maybe there's a sliding scale as to, 1 to 5 as to whether he's good, bad, or ugly, or whatever. But the aggregate of those scores from the people that are around you probably is a reasonable measure as to whether you've got decent customer service skills, I would say. No, I mean, you don't look satisfied with that.
Yeah, yes. Although I've lived in Asia for a long time, we do see then, for example, skews towards 4s and 5 scores. So the best,
rate high. Asian people rate higher, definitely. We're too shy.
We don't give ones, right? Or you find in Europe very, lots of people that are actually scored number 3. So the way actually to do it, the way that we trained the algorithms was actually to do forced rankings by multiple people on competencies in a team. So who's better at teamwork, Hung or Rina? Rina or Jürgen or Marta or Hung? And if you do that with multiple competencies, with multiple people, you take out statistical noise, and actually you find you get close, at least closest to the truth about how people are actually being perceived by how they are performing in a specific competency. And then you can run analytics to see, do these competencies actually matter to job performance? And again, job performance could then be measured in one of the KPIs that are being set and that are objectively measurable. And that's how we actually looked at and did research on figuring out what drives success in organizations. And then the third ingredient to make it scalable is actually to add the language data, the 3 open-ended questions. So once you know that Hung is being seen as a great team player by everyone, and team player matters in producing revenue, I can then see, based on the answers that you've given, I can kind of start to model the markers in your answers to the labels that I have about your performance. And if you do that for a very long time, you start to see patterns in people that outperform others. And you can actually use that very simply in the beginning to ask 3 open-ended questions to all your volume recruits. That's basically how it works. Took a while.
Yeah. No, it's. I think that's the thing. It's like one of those that is the para approach is basically quite difficult to explain. But it once you do explain it, it does seem to make sense. Marta, I think you're the one, not to blame you, but I think everyone else can hear me okay if I judge the 5/5 scoring as hearing me okay.
I thought the 5/5 was about your performance, Hung, not about your voice, but
yeah, I have no clue. I don't know whether 1 is good or 5 is good. Probably best I don't know the scale. But yeah, you know what? So it's not about scale, forced ranking. So forced ranking, just as I understand it, is that I am ranking against other people. Is that right? So it's like, oh, who's better at customer service, Rena or Hung? And the third person has to then say, oh, it's Rena. And then, and then another person.
Compare one another all the time. So it's multiple ratings.
Yeah.
Because
okay,
the problem
I like it.
usually in performance data is that manager ratings don't correlate with an actual job performance, we found. So we had to build these models by actually collecting the right data sets.
Oh, so what you're saying, the manager's rating of the employee is disconnected to the employee job performance. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Wow. Why would they do that? What's the theory behind
What is the theory behind it? Well,
hang on. Do they overrate their own employees, basically?
I think there's not a connection being made so again, one person observing one other person is always biased. We will talk about biases in the beginning, so in the end of this webinar, but that's a problem. So you want to make sure that you take multiple people into the equation to figure out what does great look like in a particular trait. And does that trait matter to actually reach a specific goal? And that type of data analysis usually doesn't happen in companies. And that's what we've been working on, to understand actually in the recruitment phase who we should hire, who we should actually invite for a personal interview, or who we should invite for the next round. I want to make sure that we hire the best people.
Yeah, this strikes me as something that every company should be doing. Certainly, I'm just the startup world. You should want to do that immediately after the core team is being built. It's a very early stage to set that scene. But you can imagine that for a big enterprise, already they've got so much legacy about hiring, and because they've got to that size, that it's going to be difficult for them to roll back to that way. But I can totally see the value of all of this. Okay, are we answering this question? Because I've got another thing flashed up here. How can AI help improve the quality of hires? We've kind of talked about it a little bit, but is there anything more AI that you want to talk about improving quality of hire?
I think what AI can do a couple of things really well. So one of the things is that it can analyze vast data sets to identify patterns that predict performance. So you can process insights from millions of interviews, right? Which is far beyond what a human recruiter could achieve in a lifetime. So basically that's what AI does very well. And we've connected that to analyzing patterns in post-hiring performance. The other thing that AI can do really well is it can personalize information and feedback. So coming back again to the personalization point, lots of candidates involving recruitment hate the fact that processes take long, they're unpersonalized, etc. So if you can give, even in such a process, personalized feedback to you, right, as a candidate, that's what AI also can do very well. So these are the two things that we're trying to combine.
I agree. I think the speed of response for candidates, definitely we're close to solving it. I think a lot of the candidate experience issues are most obviously solvable, but with artificial intelligence, the quality of hire, again, data processing issue. You can process a lot of information, probably at different stages. Like, for instance, you could scrutinize the vast amounts of data that on candidates that we've all probably still got on databases somewhere. I'm talking about pre-acquired candidates, for instance, that didn't make it for this reason or that, or they were in this type of job role, but the jobs change and actually they become more relevant, but you don't know about it because you've forgotten about the interview 2 months or so ago. That stuff can be pulled back. So I think lots of ways in which AI can help, and even with the employee sort of data and performance data being separated, AI could be the layer on top of different systems that can pull that data out of these separate systems and actually provide like a single interface for the user to actually get some sort of equality insight. So lots of ways in which this will help, I think. Okay, cool. Let's move on. How do we train AI to improve over time? Do we even want to do that? Humans in the loop, reinforcement learning, is that the right idea? Like, I don't know. In fact, maybe we don't. Like, some of the recent sort of innovations that have emerged suggest you don't put to humans to train it. You just put loads of just run like many more experiments for them to come up with the right thing. But you got a thought on this, Rena? How do we get AI to improve over time?
Well, by adding data and adding your own data. So when we work with companies, we actually build and we add in the right data, the right performance data back into the system. So if companies have, for example, a retention problem, we can actually find the patterns that lead to retention, because you can feed back these data points into the models, right? Understanding if there are patterns in why people left the company. So what you're doing basically is keep adding data, the right data, and basically the more data, because and your own data, so it's representative for your own organization, and that will build better AI models.
You know what? I think more data, let's caveat that, because it may be in the end we want less data, in the sense we want small language rather than large language models. So in other words, we have a model, but we pipe only our own data in that's most relevant. So, do we really care about how Google recruits? Because, we're not Google, we're a different business. And actually we want to, learn from ourselves. Like, how do we want to do it? That's how we get our competitive advantage. So, small language models with our own data, control that.
But for that, you need a base of particular data that you initially train on.
Sure.
So when we started, we 10 years ago, we needed far more data than we currently do. If we now train a specific model, understanding what drives success in organizations, we need 50 employees to train the model, where in the past it was far, far more, right? So I think over time, this becomes less and less and less, because the models already have a specific substance. They already know what type of things actually mattered. Now 5 million people in that data set. So now we actually can see, hey, why do certain companies in certain industries always outperform others in innovation? Why they're faster? Why they're building faster stuff? Why do some people always outperform others in driving commercial success? That's quite interesting intelligence to have at the table, I think, when you hire.
Yeah. Explain this to me. Like, basically, we have these sort of models available, right? Mm-hmm. They've all been pre-trained. This is what GPT. The P in the GP is pre-trained. And so we can't untrain them. This is they've come out like this. What we can do is retrain them, I guess, is the answer. In other words, we can help them continually evolve by how? A lot of it, well, we can by basically responding to it, right? By saying, no, it's a bad answer, do it again. And then it might just say, okay, let's keep doing it again. So that's how I assume sort of the feedback works. So classically, the up emoji, the thumbs up emoji, thumbs down emoji actually has an impact.
I would say no, I would say if you want to get really well-trained models, you need to connect recruitment with internal performance information and do that performance information well. So what we do is that we actually sit in the middle as a model for companies. So companies do give, based on the method I described earlier, give feedback on how candidates that were hired in a company are actually doing on their behaviors, on their actual performance. And that goes back to the model to optimize it and learn over time, because what success was yesterday doesn't mean that it's success for tomorrow. So, and that's the problem, because we as recruiters are not really, we can't retrain our model. It's very difficult to retrain our brain. So there's a brain in between that you actually train again, adding those type of data.
Yeah. Okay, here's a question. Actually, Marta's sort of magically asked the question and inserted it into the slide there as well. Marta, are you some sort of black witch or something? How's that even possible? But there we go. Are AI tools reinforcing existing biases instead of solving them? Are AI tools reinforcing? The answer is possibly, right? That is possible, but it's also quite an archaic example now. So the canonical example is the Amazon example, where they trained sort of their hiring system based on historical data about the people they hired, and it turned out actually they overwhelmingly hired a certain demographic of people for certain types of roles, and the AI just assumed that was the signal that they needed to continue to recruit from. So that was an example of reinforcing systems. But that was like several generations ago. So I wonder whether we can, at some point, we're going to have to stop invoking that. Today's AI tools, I think, can be instructed to do whatever the heck you want, including positive affirmative action. You can ask it specifically to do that. Or you can ask it even to be, any other bias you want to throw in there. So it's very much, I think, the responsibility of the human user or the human interactor to create this. Yeah. There's one example which might be that I think is relevant though. So just to correct myself, I realize I'm now talking to myself, which is not what Rena is pleased with.
No, I will break in.
Stream of thought. But recommendation systems, I think, are high risk of doing this. You know how you post a job and you create a job, and suddenly there's a bunch of people say, "Oh, we've matched you to these candidates. They look like the right candidates based on the job that you've posted." I think there's a risk there because, like, how do they know that those people are suitable? It's going to be based on text, kind of. Matching in some way, maybe some behavioral data, but I'm sure they're putting bias in there, probably in a positive way. Maybe I don't even use those terms, but I'm uncomfortable generally with recommendation systems ranking people in this way, because it depends a little bit on how that user has used that system. And oftentimes the best candidates are not frequent users of systems. The best candidates probably don't spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, in my opinion. They're busy doing their work. And yet a recommendation system from LinkedIn, for instance, is probably going to promote people that are very active. That's my guess. Anyway.
Yeah, correct. So I don't think that will work. It's similar to your Amazon case, although that's decades ago. But the problem with the Amazon case was, I don't think you should blame the algorithm. I think you should blame the method. So what happened was that they wrote an algorithm to look at keywords in resumes, and the problem and we do know that resumes have an accuracy, I think, of less than 3% to predict job success. So if you write an algorithm, yes, it can be more efficient again, but it doesn't deliver better candidates. So the problem here is not per se, and the fact was that they trained it on data that was I think for 97% male engineers. So as a female engineer, I wouldn't even be, recommended, because I would use different keywords. So the method needs to be different. And coming back to this question here, are AI tools reinforcing existing biases instead of solving them? I think there are examples of both, right? But if you have good practices and you follow good practices, it should decrease bias and even quantify it. So machine learning models learn from examples. So providing the right examples is extremely important. And you can also do that retroactively, measure whether there's any bias included, as long as you collect data on that. So we continually monitor whether people of different, for example, demographic groups have different odds of a high or low para score. And basically currently they don't, but if they do, you can correct for them. And that's very hard to do by a human being. We
this is very, very interesting. I'd love to see data like this. I mean, I don't know if it makes sense for you as a business to produce data of this type, but this is like fascinating stuff. I mean, it's actually really good content. Folks, would you be interested to know about demographic sort of splits in terms of who performs what well or however on certain assessments? I think it would be fascinating. Okay, cool. Pierre-Andre, no, beg your pardon. A big plus on that. Okay, what are the practices you have seen to ensure more data-driven decision making in hiring?
Yeah, I think two things for me, at least, working with clients over the past years. I think one is actually closing the loop of those that are being hired. So how do the KPIs of your hires stack up, right? What relationships do you find in those outperforming others? What relationships do you not find? What does it mean for your hiring? What does it mean for your training? So in my opinion, where we're going is that recruitment is highly connected to what happens internal in the organization. If you know if you have a blueprint of what drives success in your organization, that's also, by the way, what your CEOs are looking for. They want data, they want intelligence about these type of things. Most companies that we're working with want to improve the performance of their companies right now, while they're under pressure with cost. So if we can give you data about what drives success, and you can use the models that actually discover those patterns in a personalized way in your volume recruitment hiring, then you can move the needle, right? Then you can move the performance of your organization. So that is one. I think the other thing would be very practically to hire data scientists in your HR department so that they can actually help you to make the right choices, and also about vendors for AI solutions based on reliable experiments, and speed up the onboarding and data collection processes. Because again, lots of people are talking about AI. It's very hard to distinguish kind of a ChatGPT kind of thingy or an AI model that kind of looks at CV screening versus what we've built here. So if you have people in the organization that actually understand what we're talking about, that will tremendously help you, I think, to drive success.
Yeah, I think being a little bit more to having data literacy within TA function is obviously very, very important. And we often talk about data-driven decision making, but we don't really have a grounding in recruiting or HR. We like to adopt a lot of concepts and rhetoric from different departments that have often different kind of commitments to these concepts. So yeah, I mean, interesting, but lots that we can do or need to do. Okay, folks, we're rapidly moving to the end of this conversation. We can continue having this conversation for hours, but obviously people have work to do. Now is your chance, folks, to ask questions in the questions section if you haven't already. We're going to get to them in 5 minutes. So anything you have heard and you want to actually us to try and deal with, use the question system tab there and ask it in there. Okay, what am I looking at here? Oh, we're looking at an example, aren't we? So here are the open-ended questions. Let's boost this up. Can we increase the size of this? Can I? I'll do it myself. Here we go. Right.
Yeah,
Really, you have to read it out for me.
Yeah. Because we're talking, right? And I'm a very visual person, so I think it helps to visualize things. But This is an example of what the digital interview would look like, right? So we ask 3 open-ended questions. Example, what's the most interesting thing about you that's not on your resume hung? And you would answer in your own words. The AI would take out 200 markers in your answers and connect it with the information that we found in people that actually already perform well in jobs. And that's basically the magic that happens underneath or behind the digital interview.
How many words do I need to say for optimal for the AI to actually get enough information to respond? Because if I give a one-word answer, if I give a typical closed answer response to an open-ended question, it's like throwing grit into the machine, isn't it? That's not going to work.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it does. I mean,
I think what we currently need is, and we optimized also there based on data. We optimize the journey for candidates, asking 3 questions with 100 words. So we need 300 words to actually have enough qualitative data to analyze their answers and put that against the data that we have about 5 million profiles in the data set. Yeah.
By the way, I like the open-ended question as well, because it feels that is it proof against a ChatGPT response? It probably is, because do you know what I mean? Like, you're trying to be interesting. And one of the things that is definitely true, as far as I've seen the usage of AI for generation, is that the surface level answers typically aren't that interesting unless you have a really, really good prompt. And it's difficult to fake. I think that it's like, it seems more easy to simply come up with something that is true. I think it's kind of pro-truth, this type of questioning. Okay, let's skip to the next thing. Let's look at another question here. Oh, this is how you compare the candidates, I guess.
Yeah, that's how you compare the candidates. So this is for the recruiter, right? To actually have a comparison on the competencies that we like to measure. And I think the most, so that's one for volume hiring, that's very useful. And then I think one of the key byproducts that we found is that lots of companies are actually looking for consistency by their hiring managers, right? So we have a certain set of competencies. We want to make sure that they actually interview the candidates well, so that there is actually a candidate report that suggests also structured interview questions based on the data that we found about candidates in the next round, right? So that you can also ask follow-up questions that are personalized to that particular candidate in a follow-up conversation. And I think the third thing is the candidate report, right? So candidates also have a big frustration about, okay, nice, I waited for a week. I didn't get any feedback because we can't call the 30,000 applications, just as an example, but they actually get, feedback, personalized feedback. And I think that's coming back to the point that we were making early on in the webinar, right? That it's personalized, that it's really about me. Even I get data back that I can use for my next career path or where I should go.
Yeah. That's really, really interesting. Let's shoot to the question straight away. Some people are having to drop off. All of these people needing to drop off, by the way, I think they've failed to buffer their diaries properly. Oh no, they're overly efficient. They're overly efficient, folks. They're overly efficient because they've got like literally back to back to back to back. Never do this, guys. It adds to the stress. Okay, let's just go to the questions. We're going to just go in order. There's a voting system here, but I can see Alan's the first person that's asked the question. So let's do this. Start to answer the question. I'm answering it, but I'm not really. Can you tell us more about the patterns you identified which predict future performance? This is to you, Rena. What are the things? Give us some like real truths.
Yeah, what did we found out? So one of the key things that we found in commercial success, so we looked at tons of revenue contribution data, right, in sales teams. And we found, for example, that 2 competencies really matter. So they correlate more than others to relate to the outcomes. And that was customer focus and result driven. And so that's being measured based on the 3 open-ended questions. with a couple of other competencies that do matter, but not as much as these two. This is just an example of what we found.
Yeah.
It was, I think, 300 organizations so far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really, really interesting. That's the straight answer. That's exactly what we're looking for. Let's go with the second one. AZ, how do you screen these en masse is the next question. I mean, for volume hiring. Referring to, I think we have answered this question, though, AZ, in the sense that sort of you've got like 10,000 applications. They all get open-ended questions via the Pera system. And then from their responses, we're able to assess which ones we can predict they're going to be better performers, and then just bring those to the next stage. Correct?
Yeah, correct.
That's it. Yeah. Answer questions. Done. Dead easy. Love it. Yeah. That's it. Ask a straight question, get a straight answer. This is what you get from this this webinar, folks. You know, excellent.
I
okay.
Two questions still from Pierre. Like, can you give us
this one? Yeah.
tips or quick wins on how to master high volume hiring with AI? Hung, I've been talking a lot. What would you say based on what I've discussed?
I think that there's multiple ways in which AI can help with high volume. You can help with it from, let's be more accurate with creating the job description or the job advert, for instance. That can help. You can use AI to optimize for what it is you're looking for, so you're not attracting the wrong people. There's the first type of thing you can try. The second thing, there are technologies out there that will help you filter the candidates based on the applicant answers that they get, or you can meet them with an assessment test similar to how Pera do it. I think what ends up happening is that there's so many different AI assessment type of technologies out there. It's going to come down to a little bit about what your flavor is. It's almost like, do you drink a cappuccino in the morning or a flat white? You know, I mean,
but I like to, then I take it back, because I think that's correct. There's many things that we can do with AI, but if the killer thing to me was always run experiments, run pilots, do it for 18 months and actually start to work data-driven, comparing even your current method to, for example, the method that we've been using, and then see what the actual effect is of the problem that you're trying to solve. So if the problem is retention, if the problem is underperformance, if the problem is, hey, I have salespeople that actually can sell themselves really well, but they're actually not performing, then run your current process and run an additional process against it and actually see in a data-driven way what really works. Because
but Rita, that's too slow. You can't say a quick win and then talk about 18 months, right? So this is the thing. I think what recruiters are going to have to do
to master it, right? So I'm telling them.
Yeah, but I think what recruiters have to do, right? Here's my thinking. I'm all pro small experiment. I totally get it. But that would be ideal in 2023. What we need to do is to deal with the first challenge, which is deluge of applicants coming in. Almost every job, right? If you're advertising a job, you're getting inundated. I think the best thing you can do is you've got to throw something at that. And that is your small experiment. Get it down to a manageable number, and then you choose which technology or tool you feel fits you best. But first prove that you can get it down.
Yeah, I have to laugh at a comment from Jürgen, who says 18 months is fast if your problem runs for decades. And that is the case, right? Often if we talk about volume recruitment and we talk about quality of hire, this has been going on for ages in many companies, because the problem is we actually even didn't measure it. So is there a quick fix? Yeah, the quick fix is to actually start leveraging AI to figure out where your issue actually sits, look at the data, and then change it. And time is at our side, Hung.
So we need to have a second show talking about quick win versus like long-term values. So I'm a quick win merchant, as you can see. You know, has to happen immediately. But anyway, listen, we're coming to the end of this show. It's been a great conversation. I hope everyone's enjoyed it. We've already got some Pierre Arnaud for round 2 on this. Thank you everyone for joining. It's been a wonderful conversation. We should definitely do this again. If you're interested in checking out Para, by the way, do give it a shot. I think there's some sort of free option, isn't there, or some tester you can use, some teaser. Go and check it out. It's actually one of the most sophisticated tools out there, and it has that sort of. It seems to solve some of the problems in a very unique way, in my opinion, using open-ended questions. That seems to me to solve the personalization at scale issues. So yeah, check it out. QR codes on the top. That's about it. I'll see you later, folks. Hope you've enjoyed, and we'll take it from there.
Grazie. Bye.